Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, thanks to PANPA for the opportunity to address you today. This is my first webcast, so I'm looking forward to the format. It's a very interesting way to communicate to a broad audience. My name is Peter Chrisp. I'm the Regional President for Norske Skog, Australasia. We're supplying about 90% of the Australia and New Zealand market with newsprint and also exporting to Asia. I've only been in Australia for the past year, but I've spent the last 10 years working for Norske Skog in Europe and Norway and New Zealand. And from my accent, you can obviously tell that I'm a Kiwi at heart. Today I want to address the question of the environmental credentials of the newsprint industry. And my theme today is that the story of newsprint manufacture is actually an environmentally good story. And contrary to some views, this is a story of inherent sustainability. I think we need to be a bit more on the front foot and have the courage to recast our reputation as environmentally responsible and conscious citizens. In the page here. So firstly, this much used word, sustainability. And sustainability is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And in the paper making terms, this is our capacity to do things generation after generation without making a withdrawal on the environment. Before we get into the sustainability performance of newsprint manufacture in Australasia, I first want to talk about some of the myths around electronic advantages or the environmental advantages of digital and electronic communication. As we know, making computers requires minerals, metals, plastics, hydrocarbons, and a massive amount of energy. Did you know that 20% less CO2 is used by a person reading a daily printed newspaper versus a person reading a web-based news for 30 minutes a day? And the digital industry has its massive recycling challenges as well. Only 18% of US electronic devices are recycled compared to 60% for paper. 30 to 40 million PCs are disposed of each year. And computers left idle overnight in the US produce the same amount of carbon through energy usage as 4 million cars on the road. I found this slide the other day, which I found to be quite interesting. It talks about the Stern Review, and the Stern Review was probably the most comprehensive review of the effect of greenhouse gases on climate change that's been produced to date. It's a massive 700 pages long. And if you print the Stern Review, you use about 85 grams of CO2. If you read the Stern Review on a computer, God forbid, 226 grams of CO2. If you put it onto a CD, 300 grams, or a DVD, 350 grams. The fundamental point here is not actually about pixels versus paper. As though we're making a choice between the two, because we would have to have our heads in the sand not to realise that you need both. And we understand that digital and paper communications coexist, but it's really about getting some balance in the dialogue. From here, I now want to make the case that the paper industry is inherently sustainable, and to bring together some facts to support this argument. And like to talk about this as it applies to the newsprint industry in Australasia. I picked up a quote here from Jonathan Pirate, the chairman of the UK Sustainability Development Commission, saying there aren't many industries around that can aspire to become genuinely sustainable. The pulp and paper industry, however, is one of them, is inherently sustainable. So let's go on to examine that proposition. Firstly, we'll talk about our fundamental raw material, which is fibre. Essentially, a paper is woven wood fibre. Now, fibre comes from a range of sources. The key point here is that we're a scavenger of fibre. We use fibre that others do not want. And this includes both waste from the forest and recovered paper, and I'll describe these in some more detail. First of all, let's look at the forest fibre. The biggest and the highest value use of a forest is solid wood for construction, lumber. This is the primary reason for having a forest. However, around this there are some important residual streams. There is thinnings at 8 to 10 years where young saplings are removed to help the rest of the forest grow. These are too weak for construction timber, so are used for pulpwood. Then when the forest is harvested at full maturity, say 25 years or so, we take the bent and the knotted logs. And we also take the tops of the trees that are also not good enough for structural timber. And then when the saw log goes through the sawmill, and it has its sides trimmed up to make structural lumber, produces a residual stream of sawmill chips. So newsprint manufacture is based on pulpwood and chips, which are part of the waste stream of the forest. You think about it a bit like trimming a hedge at home. We use what is lying on the ground after the trimming is complete. All our mills now have chain of custody certification, which means we know that where every single strand of fibre comes from. And this is critical to address the issue of illegal logging of native forests internationally. And chain of custody certification has become a fundamental requirement for the environmental sustainability of the industry. And primarily here we are aiming to be able to distinguish between those who use illegally logged wood and those who don't, and those who use sustainably managed forests and those who don't. And chain of custody certification is all about tracking through an often complex supply chain and providing evidence that you know where your wood is coming from. And often that's not that easy, as wood streams are merged, pass through sawmills and go through many production and logistics stages and have many different owners. Then we talk about the forest itself. Is the forest sustainably managed? And some of the key questions here is the biodiversity of the forest maintained? Is there a provision for the regeneration of the forest? Is there protection for the underlying land, erosion, runoff and so forth? To guarantee these things, we have a system of external forest certification. And we're 60% certified in Australasia. The rest is still sustainable and plantation-based, but not yet certified. Often the part that is not certified is the smaller woodlots where the cost of certification outweighs the benefits for the owner. But this percentage of certification is increasing over time. Most importantly, we're also now 100% plantation-based since the recent conversion of our mill in Tasmania, where trees are grown like a crop. So basically, we think of trees like a crop. We grow trees, we cut them down, and we grow them again, sustainably, generation after generation. The other major source of fibre is recycled newsprint. Both sources of fibre are needed and complement each other globally. RCF by itself is not enough, as fibre can only be recycled so many times. We think about 5 to 7 times. So you need to complement the recycled fibre stream with virgin fibre. In Australia, the commitment to recycling has been a joint undertaking between publishers and Norske Skog. And in 1993, the then Australian newsprint mills, with joint ownership by News Limited and Fletcher Challenge, invested $135 million to build a de-inking plant capable of converting recycled fibre into furnish suitable for making paper. Publishers across Australia supported this effort, and Norske Skog agreed to have a high proportion of RCF in the paper making stock. And this partnership is now enshrined in the Publishers National Environment Bureau, and the overall result of which is one of the highest recovery rates in the world, with very low waste and landfill.